everyone. Welcome to this week's Karma Cards. So the energy right now is a little lumpy and bumpy feeling. We've had kind of peaks of high electromagnetic field fluctuations over the past few days. So we've been between a 5 and a 4 on the KP index, and that's kind of looks like those bunny hills on a roller coaster. So you might be feeling that. You might be feeling like you get energy and then get wiped out and get energy again as we go up and down and up and down. So it's definitely a time where you just want to be gentle with yourself and not try to get too caught up in the frustration of feeling off. Also, earlier this week, Venus finally came out of its retrograde that it's been in for, I want to say, a month and a half at least. So Venus is now moving direct, and all the work that we did on an internal level about what do we value and what do relationships mean to us, we're now starting to put that back into action. And it's still in the sign of Leo, and it's going to be there for a while. So we're going to be taking like these bolder feeling emotions, like there's a boldness and a sovereignty that comes in. So it's feeling really grounded and electric when it comes to how you love and what you value. Really, those are like rising higher up in energy at this time. And right after Venus came out of its retrograde, Jupiter went into that retrograde. So now we're going on again. It's sort of like a review of our beliefs, philosophical, how we see the big picture of life is now starting to get under review. So you might be asking yourself a lot more philosophical questions like, why am I here? What's all this for? Like, what's the point? Like, these are the questions we're going into. So again, we're in that kind of what I call the retrograde hallway, where it's like so many planets are retrograding right now. So again, there's a lot of internal work. And because of that, and also we're still inside Mercury retrograde, and that one seems to be particularly potent for returning issues. So it's interesting because there are some tech, I've heard people saying they've got tech issues, and that hasn't been the most prominent thing I've heard about. I've heard about like blasts from the past, like situations or people from the deep past coming back, coming forward, and it seems like things that you thought maybe have been resolved are coming back around again. And because of all this things coming back around, revisiting, retrograding, internalized energy, it can feel like we're not necessarily getting traction at this time. And that's something that it's part of the cycle. And so the team wants to talk about ebb and flow, like the wheel of events that are happening, that there is an outgoing energy and an inward energy, and that's a natural cycle. And so when we're in that inward energy where we're just being asked to review and reflect and relax and rest, it can feel to our ego like things are stopping, like they're not working, like something is like I'm losing something. And the team wants to remind you that you're not losing something. So the metaphor of like going inward is like going into a dark place. And a lot of times when people feel like they're going into that dark place, and I don't mean dark as a negative, I just mean dark as in like a cave is going inward, right? There's no expressed energy, which would represent that light, something that's giving off, rather it's going inward. So it has that energy of the void or the black hole. And it's easy to assume that when you're in that place that somehow you're being buried or that things are falling apart. And they want to remind you that that's never the case. You're never going inward to be buried or going into the void to be buried, but rather it's a gestational period. So think of it instead like you're being planted, like a seed being planted, or you're being carried like in a womb. And so in this place is where all creativity, where you really do get to review what you're manifesting, how you're seeing things, because how you see the world, your perception, your beliefs, and what you're thinking and saying is what you end up expressing. This is end up what you give out, and that becomes the magnetic pole creating the experience. So remember, manifestation always happens in two parts. The first part is the taking in of the information, or the taking in or the assessing of what is it I want. And then the second part is the expression of what it is you want. And those two together create the magnetic pull that brings it into your reality. So if you find that things aren't moving, or you feel buried, or like, why do I have to keep revisiting or reviewing that? Understand that something is germinating for you at this time. And germination can be a testy process sometimes, right? Because we don't always understand how long it's going to take for us to go through that germination process. It can feel like, I just want to get in, look at it, and get out. But many times it's go in and then stay there, and then root, and then ground in it, right? And then after all of those parts are done, then you start sending out your little offshoots. So we're being asked to have patience for that part, and to assess or reassess how we look at our life when we go into this inward place, or when things slow down, when we're not seeing outward traction. How do you read that? Because that part is going to be very helpful for you to understand, because either you're empowering yourself or you're victimizing yourself. Either things are growing inside of you that are making you stronger, or things are draining from you and being pulled away. So the advice from the team at this time is to use this opportunity where we're all being drawn inward to understand that it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And it is a period of potency and of growth, and it will help determine what happens as things go direct and the energy starts moving outward for you. Now let's take a quick look at this week's karma cards. All right, if you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. I have 3 decks here: planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team, what is the message for us this week? And I've got 2 sets of answers. A set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with that beautiful intuition of yours and feel, what is the guidance you need this week? Are you looking for action related guidance or outcomes? How are things going to resolve over the next week? And of course, you can always choose both. And while you're choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for September 6th through September 13th. And the flavor of this reading, we have the moon. Again, we had that last week, so we know we're going to be dealing with feelings and an intuitive state in the sign of Pisces, which is where the last super blue full moon happened, was in the sign of Pisces. Yet again, another emotional, intuitive state, right? In the 7th house, and this is the house of partnerships and relationships. So how we deal with others. So if you chose action, your spiritual action at this time is to defend your dreams diplomatically. So here we are defending our dreams, right? Have your own back. What is it you want? What is your big vision? What do you feel your purpose is? And diplomatically is in that way where, again, it's not this mine is more important than yours, just simply being clear about it. So it's not an aggressive defense, right? It's more like, I have my own back. I stand for this. This is what I believe in, and this is what I believe will happen. And it's not, we don't need to worry about having others on board with it. They get to have their version. You get to have your version. Mental action at this time: accept your idealization of relationships. Right? Okay, so with Jupiter in retrograde, one of the things we will be reviewing is idealization. So obviously idealization is how high we hold something. So if you're looking at relationships, and if we're looking at it in an idealized way, we might idealize romantic relationships. Maybe we saw a movie or a TV show or a couple in real life who seem to have the perfect relationship. And so therefore, we will use that as a standard, right? Our idealizations sort of become our standards. Like, this is what I expect to get from it. And so it's asking us to accept what you have idealized. This isn't saying implement what you idealize or uphold what you've idealized, but recognize that you might have idealization when it comes to relationships, whether it's romantic, whether it's, parent and child, business related, familial, doesn't matter. We all hold an ideal. In fact, you can really see it in like parent child relationships, right? A lot of us hold wounding from our childhood, and part of it is because there is a belief that of the relationship we thought we had, the reality of it, and then the comparison of what we see. And that creates a type of trauma because many times those things don't match up. And so it's asking us to accept that this happens. And acceptance isn't necessarily saying I like it or I approve of it. It's simply saying I acknowledge it. And that's what we're being asked to do with how we idealize our relationships in our life. Physical action at this time: let your feelings tell you how to be part of something overwhelming and get a fair deal. So when I asked my team, what do you mean by this? The being part of something overwhelming is the ideal. In fact, many times archetypes and ideals work together as well. It's a bigger, broader structure. And so we are all a part of that. And we do play into these ideals. We do try to live them, but we also sometimes hold them as an expectation for others. Like, I'm trying to be the best wife, mom, friend, business leader, whatever it is I can be. And then we hold people up to this meet my standards, right? And so understand that this is something that we're all a part of. We all have the ability to tap into it, and it is an overwhelm. It's something bigger than you. So when we're idealizing or we're in an archetypal energy, it's bigger than you. It's an energy that moves over the collective. It moves through us. And it's not necessarily something you can fully embody. It's just a bigger energy than you. It's almost like, what are they showing me? Like a huge puzzle piece in your, but you have a small opening, and so only a piece of it can like touch you. You couldn't embody the whole thing. It would overwhelm you, literally, right? So, you do tap into this energy. Like, we can all tap into the queen energy, or we can all tap into the star, or the visionary, or the executive, right? There's so many different archetypes that we can tap into, but it's bigger than us on an individual level, and therefore it's bigger than the other person as well, right? It's bigger than the people that you're like, meet me at this standard, right? So when we accept how we hold grand visions of what we want to create, and we accept, we're acknowledging, yeah, I have this grand vision of what a spouse is, or I have this grand vision of what a successful person is, or a successful relationship looks like. I have these grand visions, and I sense that I can tap into that sometimes, but I need to practice acknowledging that just as much as I can't hold it all the time, neither can you. And when we do this for each other, this is the fair deal. So we're acknowledging our ability to hold a greater potential while also being human at the same time. And when we do that, we have a more flexible standards, which you want to have strong standards, but you also want to recognize where the limit is within yourself and within others. Right, so now let's look at outcomes with the moon in Pisces in the 7th house of relationships. The spiritual outcome at this time is the nurturing of spirituality to ultimately experience balance. So the beautiful thing about this time, so we've got, Jupiter retrograde again. So this is looking inward, looking at all these, looking at our standards, looking at our beliefs, looking at the bigger picture, looking at the ideals that we hold. There is a beautiful, when we can accept that we're holding something bigger than maybe we can embody at this time. This doesn't mean you're not able to embody it in other ways, like on a spiritual level. This is absolutely where you're going. And when you're in your non-physical form, you can absolutely embody and hold that entire energy. It's just expecting yourself to hold it and then stay there. That's something that we have to acknowledge that while we're having this human experience, we can tap into it, we can have flashes of it, but holding it consistently is tricky, and it's tricky for all of us. So as we allow this information to come into our consciousness and allow it to be true, whether we like it or not, it allows us to achieve that beautiful balance, meaning I can tap into the perfect archetypal energy of nurturing mother. And I can hold this from time to time, but I'm also a human who has shortcomings, who gets tired, who gets worn out, who gets overwhelmed, right? And when we do that, we design a beautiful balance, and we stop punishing ourselves for not being able to maintain a perfect standard or a perfect ideal. And we start being real and accepting of ourselves, knowing that we are capable of reaching great heights, and we're learning how to expand so we can hold it. Mental outcome at this time: feelings caused by trusting your psychic knowledge of cooperation. Although it doesn't qualify these feelings, I would say probably the feelings are good. When you start giving other people the benefit of the doubt that they're doing the best you can, because you've also given yourself the benefit of the doubt that you're doing the best you can, that everyone has standards. Some of us have higher standards than others. Everyone is trying to reach an ideal, what they believe is the right way to do things. And as we acknowledge that, and we start tapping in with our gut and saying, I don't like what's happening here, but is the intent of this other person that I'm communicating, is their intent well-meaning, or is it nefarious? Most of the time, people are well-meaning. You do have the exceptions who are not, but that's actually more of an exception than the truth. And, in this world, we tend to focus on that rare exception than the standard. Whether good or bad, we just tend to do that. But if you acknowledge the standard that most people are positive people working towards positive results, it allows you to really open up your ability to cooperate with them, right? So even though they've done something that you don't like, was their intention to harm you? Was their intention to fail at showing up for you? Or were they doing the best they could with what they had in that given moment? And when you start seeing it from that way, you soften, you feel more cooperative, and you help draw out that cooperative energy in another. Physical outcome at this time: reactions resulting from the indecision of or about your partners. So I think as we are doing this internal look at ideals and standards, beliefs, the bigger view of the world, part of what happens here is you might find disillusionment. You might be like, wow, I really am looking at my standards, and either they're impossibly high for me, or I have a belief about them, but I also don't have a corresponding beliefs about myself and my ability to meet them. We might discover that, and we might discover that about relationships. I have these really high standards that I've set for myself. And I see this on social media all the time, especially with younger generations, where they're setting these crazy impossible standards that you have to look this way, have this much money, do these things for me, have this job, or you don't get my time, right? I see this all the time, and I'm like, these are impossible standards. So the person that you are dreaming of, would that person pick you? Right? Do you match their standards? That kind of thing. So a big part of it is getting clear about, right now there's this reaction or awareness of, geez Louise, my standards are this. I don't know if I meet them, or I feel like I do meet them, and my standards for other people are this, but they're constantly failing to meet them. That's what we're really going to be looking at. We're really going to start seeing it, because most of the time we operate with these unconsciously. We may have picked it consciously at some point, but it just gets filed, and our subconscious, or it goes right into the subconscious where it gets worked on. But in the conscious mind, it's done. It's out. It's not relevant information right in this moment unless you're asked to focus on it. So we're at a point in time where all this information that was filed back here comes forward to be looked at consciously. And we might be like, oh my God, well, no wonder if let's say you're single or something, no wonder I'm not finding anybody like this. That's a standard that is kind of like there's a ridiculousness to it, or it's so idealistic that it might be impossible for someone to live in that state. And the way that is, could I live up to that standard? Do I match those standards? So if we run it through that filter and we get yes, yes, no, no, yes, no, then we know the ones that we're saying no to, we're not a vibrational match to receiving that if we can't live up to that standard. And so therefore, how could we attract someone who does? And then we just have to ask ourselves, is it human to be able to stay in this state 24/7? And am I disappointed in others when they can't meet those standards 24/7? Can I meet my own standards for myself 24/7? Do I have some that are incredibly high? And how do I treat myself when I fail to meet those standards? And how do I treat other people when they fail to meet the standards I hold for them? And the good news is, it's not just you doing this work. Everybody's going to do this work, whether they're conscious of it and in front of it, or it comes to kind of like shake them awake. So it's not about being down on yourself. It's not about going, man, I really expect a lot of others. It's looking at that and realizing, I've seen a touch of that before. I've seen a touch of it, whether it was shown to me in a movie, a film, a novel, or in real life. And I've seen a touch of this in myself. And so because I see these things, this is what I aspire to. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, standards are very helpful for helping you live consistently the kind of life you desire to live. But we have to acknowledge that the ideal is it's an energy bigger than you, and we're going to touch it, and we can touch it regularly, but holding it is part of what we're here to learn, and that comes through growth and expansion. So when you find that it's hard to do, give yourself a lot of grace, and when you find it's hard for others to do, allow them that same grace, and watch how when you do that, the relationship is more harmonious and cooperative. And with that, I'm sending you so much love. Mwah. I'll see you next week.